Slim, and today I'm super excited because I'm going to show you how to make one of my favourite treats, wholemeal cinnamon rolls, and these can be used as a healthy extra B on the Slimming World plan. So let's crack on. To start with, I'm going to talk you through what we need. We don't need a lot of things, but some of these might sound obscure. Just bear with me, you will need them all. To start with, in the ingredients, we're going to need some wholemeal flour. I've got Allinson, but any plain strong wholemeal flour, not wholemeal self-raising flour, but just plain wholemeal flour. We'll need some sunflower oil, some honey, you'll need 1 egg, some dried yeast, which comes in a little tub. You can also get this in sachets as well. Some artificial sweetener. I'm using actually a natural one. I'm using stevia. Some milk. You could use skimmed milk, soy milk, almond milk, and I'm using almond milk because I want to make these non-dairy. You'll need salt. You'll need cinnamon, and lastly, it's going to sound obscure, but just trust me, you'll need some fry light. What Slimming World recipe doesn't have fry light? In terms of apparatus, you will need a mixer if you have one, but this can be done by hand, it's just a little bit more work. A jug, some measuring cups. I'm using 1 cup measuring unit and half a cup. Some measuring spoons and a fork and a spare teaspoon. To begin with, we're going to make the dough. Making the dough, it's quite a quick process, but then you're going to leave it to rise for about an hour and a half, and you can get on with whatever else other things that you need to do. So it's quite a simple recipe, but it is slightly time consuming because you'll need to have some time for the dough to rise. To begin with, we are going to activate some yeast, and we're going to need warm water. I boiled the kettle about a half an hour ago, so it'll be warm now. You don't want boiling water because otherwise it will kill the yeast. So we're going to start with 1 tablespoon of the dried yeast, which I'm going to put in the jug. And you need a 1/4 cup of warm water, but my kettle feels quite hot still, so I'm going to get some tap water to mix with the kettle water because you don't want it to be boiling. And we're going to need a 1/4 cup of water, so I've got a half cup measuring unit and I'm going to half fill this. So I'm going to add a little bit of the boiling water, or near boiling water, and I'm probably going to spill it, but I'm going to add a little bit of cool water. And then I've got, this is half full, so that's a 1/4 cup of warm water. It should be warm so I can put my finger in it and it doesn't feel like I'm scalding myself. And just pour that on the yeast. And we're going to give that a mix with a fork. Just so all the little granules of yeast are mixed into the water. And then I'm going to leave that to sit for a couple of minutes. The way to tell when your yeast has activated is if you leave it to sit, you'll start to have some sort of foam, almost as if it's a dog salivating, little bubbly foam that sits on the top of it, and that's when you know the yeast has started to activate. I'm just going to stir that in properly. Great. I'm going to leave that there. Okay, next I'm going to measure out the flour. The flour you're going to need approximately 2.5 cups. We may add a bit more later, but we'll get to that if we do. I'm using the dough hook on my mixer. You can do this by hand. It's simply a case of mixing with your hands in a bowl, getting a little bit dirty, but if you've got one of these, it makes it a lot easier. so we're putting in here 2.5 cups of wholemeal flour. And this is what makes it suitable for Slimming World and a healthy extra. And don't forget, when you measure out, you want an even cup, not a heaped cup. Let's see if I can get it out. There we go, that's 1. We may add more flour later, we shall see. Okay, next up, you want to add the remaining dry ingredients before we add in the wet ingredients. So that means salt, and we're going to use just 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon may sound a lot, but bear in mind this is going to make several rolls. And then we're going to add in the wet ingredients. We'll start with the honey and the oil. Now, I find that the easiest way to get the honey off the measuring spoons is if the measuring spoons are greased. So therefore I measure out the oil first and then the honey should just slip through. So we're going to want 3 tablespoons of oil. 3. Now what you've got is a very well greased measuring spoon, and we're going to have 2 tablespoons of honey. Any honey will do. I've got some Australian honey from Morrison's, which is rather lovely actually. And if you watch, this should just slip out very easily, and there's no honey left stuck in the spoon. A little trick that I share with everybody. And before you think, what? This is Slimming World friendly and there's honey in the bread, you'll actually find that most bread, if not all bread that you'll buy in the supermarket, has sugar in it. And this is just a little bit healthier than sugar. Okay, next we're going to add the egg, which I'm going to crack into a glass first. Just so that you can check there's nothing funny in the egg and you don't get any shell in your bread mix. Looks like a pretty good egg. There goes. Right. Now the only thing left is the milk and the yeast mixture, which is difficult to actually show you, but a sort of foam has appeared on the top of this, which means that it's activated and it's ready. Now, to the yeast mixture, I'm going to add the milk, and I'm using almond milk, and I'm going to put a half a cup of milk into the yeast mixture. Spill all over the kitchen. Okay. Then mix with a fork. And then I'm just going to pour the remaining liquid, into the bowl with the flour, the egg, the honey, the oil, the salt, and then we're ready to go. If there's any yeast that gets stuck at the bottom, which there isn't, then just scrape it in, but there shouldn't be. Now for the noisy bit, we're going to put it in the mixer. Now when it's all incorporated, you want to give the dough a good kneading, which you can either do in the machine, but this is the point when I actually find that even with the machine, you're better off to take it out and give it a proper kneading yourself. So, scrape off the dough hook, scrape off any bits that are stuck on the edge. Out. This feels like perfect consistency. I'm going to give it a good kneading. And actually, one little tip which I should have done myself is to put a damp cloth underneath your board to stop it from sliding. Tea towel here. There we go. Now it doesn't slide. Just going to give this a good kneading. When you can punch it and you can see it bounce back, then you know you're getting somewhere. Just knead it for a few minutes. My kneading skills are not exactly that to be desired, but if the job gets done, that's what matters. And I'm punching it and it's bouncing back pretty nicely. So I'm going to roll it into a ball, and now we're going to stick it back in our bowl and we're going to let it rise, because you can see it's about the size of 2.5 tennis balls. And we're going to cover the bowl in cling film. Just helps to keep it warm. And then we're going to cover it in a tea towel. And I'm going to use this rather moist one here. Which does the job. And then we're going to leave that in the warmest place, and given the temperature in my flats right now, this is perfectly warm enough, and I'm going to leave it for about an hour to an hour and a half. I'll have a quick look at it after an hour and see whether it's risen well or whether it needs a little longer, and we'll be back soon. Hello. Okay, so now we are going to turn our dough out. My dough has been rising for about an hour and a half, and it has pretty much trebled in size, which is even better than I expected. And we're going to turn this dough out and we are going to make our cinnamon rolls. As you can see, I have a huge bowl of dough, which was originally the size of 2 tennis balls, is now the size of a small football. Now I have just cleaned my surface down. I think that the best thing is to either use a huge chopping board if you've got one, or to clean your surface down and to use your surface to make the cinnamon rolls. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour down just to make sure that it doesn't stick too much. And we're just going to give this a second kneading. And we're just going to give this a second kneading, and it's going to shrink in size again. And you want to see the dough bouncing back. There we go. Right. Now, because we are making these rolls as Slimming World Healthy Extras, we want to ensure that each roll is 60 grams. And from experience, I found that if you measure it out as 65 grams roughly of raw dough, it will be about 60 grams when it's cooked. So, I've got my measuring scales. I'm just going to put a little bit of dust on, a little bit of flour on them, so that the bread dough doesn't stick. And we're going to start measuring out 60 gram portions, which will look very small. That's 51. Okay, that's 165 gram. Perfect, 63 gram. Okay, so now that I've got the dough measured out in portions that once cooked will be roughly 60 grams, I've got 10 portions of them. I've prepared 2 baking trays, or rather a cake tin and a baking tray. I've just lined it with some greaseproof paper, and I've got one small cake tin, and I'm going to show you why I'm doing that, because we're going to do something a little bit more fun with that one. And I've just lined those, I've got those ready, and we'll put them to the side till we need them. Okay, so now I'm going to take 6 of the dough balls and I'm going to put them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to knead it into one big ball. Give it a good old punch, like it's an ex-boyfriend or something. And then we're going to roll it out into a rectangle. And we need a rolling pin. Now, I find the easiest way to get it into a rectangle shape is to actually start with a log shape. So I'm going to roll it into a ball, or at least attempt to. There we go. And I'm going to roll it into a log shape. Okay. And if you keep turning it, it should help you get a moderately rectangular shape. Okay, this is where the fun begins. We're going to turn this rectangular piece of dough into cinnamon rolls. And to start with, we're going to use the favourite Slimming World ingredient, fry light. Now this is simply to avoid using oil or butter, and this is to help the cinnamon and the sweetness stick. So we're just going to spray it moderately generously. And then we need a fork, which I almost forgot. And we're going to prick the dough. Okay. Just give some little grooves for the flavour to fall into. You don't want to prick it all the way through, but just lightly at the top. Then we're going to sprinkle our sweetener, and I'm using stevia, which is the natural canderel, so to speak. And we're going to sprinkle that generously across the top of it. And yes, You're going to make a mess on your work surface, and if I can deal with that, so can you. So we sprinkle the top of that with stevia. We're going to spray again, but you've got to be careful that your stevia doesn't blow away when you spray. So we do this fairly low down. Okay, next up, the cinnamon. Now I really like cinnamon, so I'm going to sprinkle it rather generously. So the entire surface is covered with the cinnamon. Meanwhile, my glasses fall down from the shaking. It's almost the whole thing covered. It's pretty easy to see where you haven't actually got the cinnamon on because it turns it a slightly darker colour. And because you've got the moisture from the fry light that you sprayed before, it will just absorb. Right, now this is where we're going to get messy. We're going to roll it up, and I find the easiest way of rolling it up is to roll it towards me. So we're going to fold it in a little bit, and just roll. And roll, and roll, and roll, and roll. Fully roll up. And just keep it seam down. Square it up a little bit, just to even out the size of it. There we go. Now, the reason I have used one small cake dish is because I think it's quite lovely to make pull-apart rolls, especially if you're entertaining. So, for this one, we're going to use 6 or 7, and we're going to have them all stuck together so that you can pull apart, and you'll see it looks rather pretty when it comes out. So this roll is going to be cut into 6 pieces. For the pull apart, we're actually going to want 7, so we'll use another one of those when we do the second lot. But first of all, the easiest way is to cut it in half and then cut it into 3. 3, 1. And I actually recommend a bread knife for doing this because you don't want the dough to squish everywhere, so you want a rather sharp knife. Then I'm going to plop them in. And in fact, I might use 6 for this one. I might use 7. Let's have a look. We can use 6 for this one. We're going to use 6 instead of 7. Why not? So I'm going to just press them down a little bit because they're quite tall. And we're going to stick them together in a flower shape. You want them all touching each other. Press them down a little bit. All touching each other. So, as you can see, we've got a flower shape. Slide around in there, but we're going to put that to the side while we do the other one. And we've got 4 balls left, so we're going to mix those together, and we're going to do exactly the same thing, and then we're going to cut this one into 4 pieces, and I'm going to put them on the dish as and I'm going to put them on the baking tray as 4 separate rolls. So we've got a log shape, a bit more flour, into a rectangle. Now they won't all look the same, but as long as you've weighed them out, then you know pretty much that you're dealing with each one weighing the same and weighing that of a healthy extra on the Slimming World plan. I'm just going to stretch this out to a rectangular-ish shape, and now I'm going to repeat with this one what I did with the other one. So we're going to start with spraying it with dry light, pricking it with a fork, meanwhile I've heated the oven to 200 degrees Celsius ready for baking them, and sprinkle this one with the stevia, and again with the cinnamon. Give it a good old shake. My glasses fall down my nose again. This one up again. So roll, roll, and roll. Just turn it into a more rectangular shape. And this one was 4 lots of 60 grams, or 65 grams rather, so I'm going to cut this into 4. Now, just by waiting an extra 5 minutes, this one has proved again, and it has risen a little bit more, which means you're going to get really nice light rolls. So I'm going to leave this one to rise as well for a couple of minutes. So I don't know if I can show you properly, but these ones are actually 2/3 the size of the other ones. So we'll leave those ones for a couple of minutes, and we're going to get some milk ready to wash the tops, just to give them a nice colouring. Okay, so I've got some more of my almond milk, but you can use whichever milk you're using. And I'm going to brush the tops of them just to give them a nice bit of a colour when they're in the oven. And just round the sides. And make a mess all over your kitchen counter, but it doesn't matter because you've got to wash it up anyway. And this is just going to look particularly lovely if you've got friends over for tea, or you're having a nice family breakfast and you want to put something nice on the table. That's going to look lovely when it's all cooked together. I'm just going to wash these ones as well. You can use an egg for this, but I don't see the need. And then we're going to sprinkle just a tiny bit more of the sweetener on top of them. Just to make sure they're nice and sweet. Okay, so now we have 6 cinnamon rolls in this tray, 4 in this tray, a great deal of mess to clear up in the kitchen, but we'll come back to that later. And we're going to put them in the oven for about 20 minutes at 200 degrees. The 6 stuck together should take a little bit longer because it's effectively like cooking a whole loaf. So I'll probably take the 4 individual ones out at about 20 minutes, and these ones will probably come out at about 25 minutes. But with bread, the best thing is to watch it, and after a while you get used to judging how well it's cooked. Hello, so I'm back again, and my kitchen is boiling hot, but it smells delicious, and now I'm quite excited. So we've got some things to get out of the oven. Oh, this is exciting. Get one tray. How about this? What would your family think if they came down to this for breakfast instead of a couple of slices of Kingsmill? Look at these cinnamon rolls, all baked into one loaf. How beautiful would that look at a tea party? And you'd know that you could have it because it was a healthy extra, and you could put some butter on the table to go with it for your guests, but they're quite sweet bread and they really wouldn't need it. We've got the individual ones in here. I'm just going to do a little check live on YouTube to see the weight of these, and they were roughly each about 65 grams before we cooked them. So let's check the weight of a couple of them just to see. They're not going to be exact, but it's as close as you can get, and that is actually 59 grams. Now my hands are turning the number a funny number, but that roll is exactly 59 grams. Let's do one more. And that one is 62 grams. And there you have it. The proof is in the pudding, or rather the wholemeal cinnamon rolls. So join me again next time, and